Hi, my name is David Corey, and I'm your professor for this course in Interconfessional Dialogue. Imagine that, a course in ecumenical studies. I kind of feel like it's like being in a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. Hi, my name is Jan, and I'm a Catholic. Hi, my name is Sarah, and I'm a Reformed Christian. Hi, my name is Adib, and I'm a Copt. So, my name is David, and I'm a Pentecostal. True Confessions, this is my first year teaching this course, created and shaped by Dr. Jelle Kramers, and he has done a superb job. I couldn't improve on the syllabus or the readings, so I've left everything substantially the same. I need to tell you that I'm a theologian and not an ecumenist. An ecumenist, there's a word. But let me tell you a little bit about myself. First of all, academic background. I have a Bachelor of Science in Biochemistry, a master's degree in history. My thesis was on a comparison of American and Canadian religious historiography. So I should tell you, I'm a Canadian. I also have a PhD, and my thesis there in Christian theology was a critique of Pentecostal triumphalism using Luther's theology of the cross. So I'd say I'm a bit of a constructive theologian. Plus, I also should tell you that I spent 30 years of my life as a pastor in two separate churches, 10 years in Sudbury, Ontario, in a church called Glad Tidings, and 20 years in Cambridge, Ontario, at a church called Calvary. Both of them growing churches, leading churches in their communities, which really gave me a lot of platform and connection with other churches and other kinds of Christians. But probably more of interest for this course is the fact that I was raised Syrian Orthodox, and I was also raised in a world and in a family filled with Catholics. Later, I attended an Anglican boarding school where we had chapel 6 days a week. Boy, I know the Book of Common Prayer, particularly the older one, not the more recent version. But at the age of 19, I experienced a dramatic, like Damascus Road conversion. And my early Christian experience was quite influenced by the Plymouth Brethren. Not that I went to a Brethren assembly, but lots of really leading people in my early Christian life were from that Brethren background. But soon, I became a Pentecostal by way of the charismatic movement. I was part of an Anabaptist college for a few years while I was doing some studies. And I've devoted some years of my life to the study of Martin Luther. So I've got a kind of an eclectic theological background. When I first became an engaged believer, I began looking for fellowship where I had been raised. And so I went to the Orthodox Church to tell the priest that I was about to be baptized again. Well, he told me that if I was ever baptized again, then my Orthodox faith would be useless and I would be anathema. I think that was the word he used, anathema. And so I began looking around, and so I attended Anglican churches and Methodist Presbyterian Union churches in Canada, and I didn't find anybody talking about the kind of encounter I had had with Jesus that had changed my life. I went to the chaplain of my boarding school to tell him that I had been saved. He looked at me kind of queerly and sort of said, "What?" And so none of these were really positive experiences. And I began my intentional discipleship with the zeal of a convert, going where my personal study of the Bible led me. And eventually, it led me to Pentecostalism. Now, this individually driven quest, divorced of church or tradition, had a serious effect on my early development as a Christian. I knew there must be Christians in every tradition, but how could they stay there? I mean, it was the charismatic movement that really opened my eyes. and shocked me. I mean, there were Christians of every denominational background gathering together in the Windsor Hotel ballroom in Montreal at the Full Gospel Businessmen's Fellowship International breakfast. And it was amazing to see 500 people all worshiping Jesus from all kinds of denominational backgrounds. But in my charismatic journey, when in an interdenominational gathering, a Catholic woman gave a prophecy in the name of Mary, I was shocked. I mean, I didn't have any doctrinal categories for that. I mean, what are you supposed to do with a prophecy in the name of Mary? I didn't know what to do. Over the years, though, my native curiosity pushed me to look around. After all, it couldn't be as simple as first there was the early church and then 2,000 years of nothing and then the charismatic movement. It couldn't be that simple. And my basic historical interest caused me first to take a second look at my Orthodox roots. And there I found an incredibly rich spirituality that had its roots in the church fathers. Here, I think, is a first principle of ecumenical study: the astounding variety of Christian experiences and expressions, and yet they all share these common roots. I mean, ultimately, we all go back to the apostolic church. And we have some sort of a relationship with the church fathers. In the title of Robert Weber's classic book about evangelicalism, Common Roots, I think that that's certainly a first principle of ecumenical study. Now, this led to a second problem as I began to read the church fathers. Already, Ignatius and Polycarp, leaders who seem to have had a living connection to the Apostle John, already they seem to say things about the church that sound way more orthodox and way more Catholic than my contemporary Pentecostal evangelical understanding, particularly things about the role of bishops and the Eucharist and the church. I thought, yikes, what if these Orthodox guys and these Catholics were right? And so here's the second principle I think that should guide us. The long tradition of Christianity is an excellent, even if not an infallible, teacher. Of course, by now, I was a convinced Protestant. I mean, I knew all about Luther and the 95 Theses and those pesky indulgences, and I had read about Calvin's Geneva, and I wondered, wow, wouldn't it be great to be in a town like that? And then in Bible college, I had an assignment to read about the radical Reformation in William Estep's wonderful book, The Anabaptist Story. You know, those enthusiasts who felt that the magisterial reformers didn't go far enough. And the assignment was to draw comparisons with Pentecostalism. And wow, was I ever mind blown, because, I mean, as a charismatic, as a Pentecostal, I mean, our feeling, or my feeling as a young Pentecostal was, the other churches just don't go far enough. And here's a fourth principle of my ecumenical journey. In the words of Koheleth, the preacher, what has been will be again, and what has been done will be done again. There's nothing new under the sun. Sometimes we think we're part of some radical transformation. You know what? We belong to a deep and broad river of Christianity. Well, as you can see, I'm kind of like a novice student of clinical psychology. Every sickness, every malady or dysfunction I read about, I can find in me. And as I encountered these different religious traditions, I could affirm that I could see myself in each one of them. I found things in each tradition that I could really appreciate. And I could also be self-critical enough to be aware that my own Pentecostal spirituality wasn't sufficient to grasp the breadth of truly Christian experience. And so a fifth principle of ecumenical study, at the heart of it, as Christians who all worship Jesus Christ within the parameters of orthodoxy, to quote the great theologian John Lennon, I am he as you are he, as you are me, and we are all together. I think that there's got to be some underlying unity about those people who love Jesus. And now a final principle. It stems from that time when, as a young charismatic, I heard a Catholic prophesy in the name of Mary. I had been a Christian by this time for about 2 or 3 years, and I already had an awareness that the church was bigger than us four, no more, Acts 2:4. And if this was true, it meant that there must be disagreement on some pretty major things, like how to read the Bible and what you think about its origins and its authors, or its author, the meaning of the Lord's table, baptism. What is it to be born again? These are questions that I could see might be really problematic for Christians talking to one another. One day, I was sitting in St. Mark's Chapel at Bishop's University in Lennoxville, Quebec, and I was reading and praying over John 17, the real Lord's Prayer. And I had read this chapter many, many different times, but verses 20 and 21 really spoke to my spirit. My prayer is not for them alone. Jesus says, I'm not praying just for these 12. I pray also for those who will believe in me through their message. Well, I'm pretty sure that's Ignatius and Polycarp. And I think it's probably you and me too. That all of them, did you hear that? That all of them may be one, Father, just as you are in me and I am in you. Now, I'm not convinced that it's a structural unity that Jesus is after here. I think it's something deeper, something more real, more authentic. But here's the kicker. May they also be in us, so that the world may believe that you have sent me. People will come to Christ individually here and there, and not as many as I would like. Let me tell you, as a pastor of a church, not happy with how many people are coming to Christ. How many of you understand? I don't know that Jesus is all that happy either, but that's a whole other conversation. People will come to Christ individually, but if we want the world to know that Christ, well, if we want the world to know Christ, here's a conditional statement. It says, if, not if and only if. There may be other ways. I mean, if I am lifted up, I will draw all men to myself, Jesus said. But if we can find a way of expressing to God, to each other, to the world at large, that we are one in Christ, then the world will know that the Father sent him. Now, I don't want to make too much out of this, but it does sound pretty Trinitarian to me. Well, let me just tell you that it was a huge moment in my spiritual life as a young disciple. And we owe it to ourselves and to our Lord to embark on this journey, this study, if for no other reason than Jesus prayed we would. So I look forward to getting to know you and having some time together. And I invite you to correspond with me by email. I have to confess, sometimes I need to be prodded, but I'm here, and I want to be a journeyer together with you. God bless.